Every family has its stories, the ones we tell at holidays, the ones that shape who we are, and the ones we never knew existed. This is a story about Edward Barnes, father, veteran, pillar of his community, and keeper of a secret that would only be revealed after his passing. When the Barnes family gathered to say goodbye to their father, they thought they knew the man they were laying to rest. They were wrong. My name is Denise Barnes Miller. Dad was 76 when he died. Peacefully, the doctors said. A heart that had served him for over 7 decades finally decided it was time to rest. Dad had been a Navy man, served 22 years before retiring as a chief petty officer. He wore that title with more pride than anything else in his life, except maybe being our father. There were 3 of us kids. Me, the oldest at 51, my brother Michael, who's 48, and our baby sister Jennifer, 44. Mum passed 5 years before Dad, after 43 years of what we all believed was a happy marriage. They had their arguments like any couple, but they seemed solid, devoted. Dad was devastated when she died. Our childhoods were fairly typical for a military family. We moved every few years, always within the States, thankfully. Dad was gone on deployment sometimes, but when he was home, he was present, coaching Little League, teaching us to fish, attending every school event he could. After retiring from the Navy, he became a deacon at First Baptist and worked as a manager at the hardware store until he was 70. Everyone in town knew Edward Barnes. Dad wasn't perfect. He could be distant sometimes, disappearing into his thoughts. He'd take these solo fishing trips a few times a year. Need to clear my head, he'd say. Mum never questioned it, so neither did we. His generation wasn't big on talking about feelings. We thought it was his way of processing whatever burdens he carried from his military days. The funeral was everything Dad would have wanted. Military honors, his fellow deacons serving as pallbearers, the church packed with people whose lives he'd touched. There's something comforting about laying someone to rest properly. It felt like closure. Until 3 days later, when that closure was ripped away. Dad's will was simple. He didn't have much. The house he and Mum had paid off 20 years ago, a modest retirement account, some savings. Nothing extravagant, but enough that we wouldn't have to worry about funeral expenses, and we'd each get a small inheritance. Michael is an accountant, so we decided he would handle the paperwork along with Dad's attorney, Robert Wheeler. I was at Dad's house with Jennifer, sorting through his belongings. It's strange, the intimacy of going through someone's drawers after they're gone. Each object a small revelation about the person you thought you knew completely. We were in Dad's home office, tackling his filing cabinet, when I found it. A folder labeled simply Family Documents, tucked behind some tax returns. "Jen, look at this," I said, pulling out what appeared to be another will, dated just 18 months earlier than the one Robert had presented to us. Jennifer looked over my shoulder as I scanned the document. Most of it matched what we already knew, until page 3. To Maria Delgado, the sum of $50,000 in recognition of our friendship and her kindness over the years. And then, to Jason and Sophia Delgado, whom I acknowledge as my biological children, I leave 20% each of my remaining estate, to be divided equally between them. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Jennifer grabbed the paper from my hands, read it twice, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. "This has to be a mistake," she whispered. But it wasn't a mistake. It was notarized, signed, witnessed, legal in every way. I called Michael immediately. "You need to come over, now." While waiting for Michael, Jennifer and I tore through the office looking for any mention of the Delgados. We found nothing. No photos, no letters, no cards. But we did find a key to a safe deposit box we didn't know existed. Michael arrived 30 minutes later, and I handed him the will without comment. I watched his face transition from confusion to shock to anger. "This can't be real," he said, his accountant's mind already calculating what this meant. Dad wouldn't do this to us, to Mom. But he had done it, and now we had questions that our dead father couldn't answer. We took the will to Robert Wheeler the next morning. I'll never forget the look on his face, not surprise, but resignation. He knew. "Your father came to me about this a few years ago," Robert admitted. "He wanted to update his will to include these other children. But then he changed his mind. He said he couldn't bear for you all to find out this way. He promised he would tell you himself when the time was right." "Well, he didn't," Michael snapped. "And now we're supposed to share our inheritance with strangers? People who might be con artists for all we know?" Robert shook his head. "They're not strangers to Edward, and they're not con artists. Maria worked at the naval base in San Diego, where your father was stationed periodically in the late 70s. Their relationship spanned many years. While he was married to our mother," Jennifer said flatly. Robert nodded, his eyes sympathetic but firm. "Your father was human. He made mistakes, but he also tried to do right by everyone in the end." "Do right?" I echoed. "By hiding this for decades? By making us find out after he's gone?" "The legal situation is complicated," Robert continued. "Technically, the most recent will supersedes this one, but this will was never officially revoked. And given that he specifically acknowledges paternity in this document, Jason and Sophia could have a strong claim regardless." "We should contest it," Michael said immediately. "They'd have to prove paternity." "They could request DNA testing," Robert countered. "And based on my conversations with your father, I believe the results would confirm their claim." We sat in stunned silence. Dad, our dad, had another family, had been living a double life for longer than any of us had been alive. "Where are they now?" I finally asked. "These Delgados?" "Maria still lives in San Diego. Jason is in Los Angeles, and Sophia is in Portland." "Did they know about us?" Jennifer asked, her voice small. Robert hesitated. "Yes, they've known for many years." That was somehow the most painful part. They knew about us, but we never knew about them. They had the complete picture while we were living a partial truth. We left Robert's office with a decision to make. Contest the will and drag ourselves through a legal battle that would expose Dad's secret to everyone. Or accept this new reality and try to make peace with it. That night, I found myself looking through old photo albums. Every memory now questioned, every absence re-examined. The fishing trips, the work conferences, even his deployment schedules, had they all been opportunities to visit his other family. There was a photo of Dad holding me on his shoulders at the beach when I was about 6. His smile was radiant, genuine. Was he thinking about his other children then? Was he comparing me to them? I called my husband from across the country where he was on a business trip. After explaining everything through tears, he asked the one question I hadn't let myself consider. "What would your mom want you to do?" Mom, who taught Sunday school and believed in forgiveness. Mom, who loved Dad despite his flaws. Would she want us to reject these people who shared our blood? Or would she want us to find a way forward with compassion? The next morning, I called my siblings and asked them to meet me for breakfast. They looked as exhausted as I felt. "I think we should meet them," I said without preamble. Jennifer looked shocked. Michael looked betrayed. "Are you serious?" Michael demanded. "These people who helped Dad cheat on Mom? Who kept this secret while we buried both our parents?" "They're our half-siblings," I said quietly. "And from what Robert said, they didn't ask to be born into this situation any more than we did." "I can't believe you're taking their side," Jennifer whispered. "I'm not taking sides. But contesting the will means a legal battle, public exposure, DNA tests. Everyone in town would know. Dad's reputation, Mom's dignity, it would all be tarnished publicly. Is that what you want? We argued for hours. Michael was adamant that we should fight. Jennifer wavered between anger and curiosity. I maintained that meeting them was the only way to understand the whole truth. Finally, Michael threw up his hands. Fine, meet them if you want, but I'm not promising anything. I asked Robert to arrange a meeting. 1 week later, we found ourselves sitting in a private room at a restaurant halfway between our town and the airport, where Maria, Jason, and Sophia had flown in. The door opened, and suddenly they were there, these strangers who shared our father's blood. Maria was in her early 70s, elegant with silver-streaked dark hair. She had kind eyes that crinkled with nerves. Jason was tall like Dad, with the same cleft chin. Sophia had Dad's eyes exactly, that distinctive Barnes blue that people had always commented on. The resemblance was undeniable, devastating in its clarity. These were our father's children. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Maria stepped forward. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," she said softly. "I know this must be incredibly difficult." Michael remained stony-faced. Jennifer stared at her hands. I found myself nodding mechanically. "How long?" I asked, the question that had been burning inside me. "How long were you and our father?" 42 years, Maria answered steadily. "We met when he was stationed in San Diego in 1978. I was working as an administrative assistant on the base. 42 years, almost the entirety of my parents' marriage." "Did our mother know?" Jennifer asked, her voice breaking. Maria hesitated. "Not at first. Later. I believe she suspected. Edward never confirmed it to me, but about 15 years ago something changed. He seemed lighter, like a burden had been shared. I always wondered if they had come to some understanding." "That's convenient," Michael scoffed. "Dad and Mom both gone, so we just have to take your word for it." "We're not here to take anything from you," Jason spoke up. His voice was deep, resonant, like Dad's. "We didn't ask Dad to include us in his will." "But you knew about us all along," I said, not accusingly but needing confirmation. "Yes," Sophia nodded. "Dad visited several times a year, all our lives. He never hid your existence from us. We grew up seeing pictures of you three, hearing stories about you." I felt dizzy. All those times Dad was gone fishing or at conferences, he was with them, building memories, being a father, just to different children. "Did you ever want to meet us?" Jennifer asked. "All the time," Sophia admitted. "But Dad was clear that it was complicated, that your mother deserved her dignity, that revealing everything would only cause pain. So instead, he lied to everyone," Michael said bitterly. "He made mistakes," Maria acknowledged, "but he loved all 5 of his children, and he loved both me and your mother in different ways." We talked for hours. Painful questions, honest answers. We learned that Dad had helped put Jason and Sophia through college, had attended their graduations discreetly, had walked Sophia down the aisle at her wedding in a private ceremony, had held his grandchildren from that side of his family, all while being our father too, all while being Mom's husband. As the day wore on, something unexpected happened. The anger didn't disappear, but it began to make room for curiosity, for connection. Jason shared Dad's passion for woodworking. Sophia had his laugh. They had stories about Dad I'd never heard, sides of him I'd never seen. By the time we parted, we'd agreed to a compromise. We wouldn't contest the will. Jason and Sophia would receive what Dad had intended for them. But we asked for time to process, to grieve not just Dad's death, but the shattering of who we thought he was. They understood. They'd had decades to reconcile their complicated relationship with our father. We'd had only days. In the weeks that followed, I found myself looking at old photographs differently, not erasing the happy memories, but seeing them as part of a more complex picture. Dad wasn't just the hero I'd thought he was, but he wasn't a villain either. He was human, capable of love and selfishness, of courage and cowardice. We siblings processed differently. Michael remained angry the longest, feeling betrayed by the father he'd idolized. Jennifer sought therapy, working through feelings of inadequacy, wondering if Dad's absences meant he preferred his other family. I found myself in a strange middle place, sad for what had happened, but increasingly curious about these people who shared our history from a different angle. 6 months after that first meeting, I reached out to Sophia. We met for coffee when she was in town visiting Dad's grave. It was awkward at first, but then something shifted when she pulled out her phone to show me pictures of her children, Dad's grandchildren. "Emily has his eyes," she said, showing me a photo of a laughing 10-year-old. "And his stubbornness, I bet," I replied, recognizing that determined Barnes chin. We both laughed, and in that moment, I felt the first real healing. Not forgiveness exactly. There was too much complexity for simple forgiveness, but acceptance. This was our reality now. 1 year after Dad's death, all 5 of us children met at his grave. We didn't make speeches or grand gestures of reconciliation. We simply stood together, acknowledging the complicated man who had connected us all. Later, over dinner, we shared stories, filling in the gaps in each other's understanding of Edward Barnes, the Navy man, the hardware store manager, the fisherman, the deacon, the father, the secret keeper. Maria didn't join us that day. Some boundaries were still necessary, some wounds still too fresh. But she sent us a letter through Robert, which I read aloud to my siblings, both sets of them. "Edward made choices that hurt people he loved," she wrote. "He carried that guilt every day, but his love for all 5 of his children was real and complete. He failed as a husband in many ways, but he tried his best never to fail as your father. I hope someday you can all find peace with who he really was. Not the perfect man you thought you knew, nor the liar you now fear he was, but something honest in between." 2 years have passed since we buried Dad. The legal matters are settled, the practical details of his estate distributed according to his wishes. The emotional landscape remains more complicated. I've developed a genuine friendship with Sophia. Our children, cousins who never knew they existed, have met several times. Michael has slowly opened up to Jason, bonding over shared memories of Dad teaching them both to change oil in the car using the exact same corny jokes. Jennifer still struggles the most, but even she has begun to see that expanding our family doesn't diminish what we had before. It just adds more truth to the picture. Dad's secret changed us all. It challenged everything we thought we knew about him, about our childhood, about our family's story. The pain of his deception hasn't disappeared, but alongside it has grown something unexpected, a deeper understanding of human complexity, of how love and betrayal can coexist, of how good people can make terrible choices. I won't presume to tell you how to judge my father. His choices created both love and pain in equal measure. But I will share what his story has taught me. Secrets don't die when we do. They live on in the complications they create for those left behind. The greatest kindness we can offer our loved ones isn't protection from difficult truths. It's the courage to be honest, while we still have time to heal together. If you're carrying a secret that will outlive you, consider the burden you're placing on those who will have to make sense of it without you. And if, like me, you've discovered family secrets after it's too late for explanations. Know that it's possible to honor the good memories while acknowledging the painful truths. The story of Edward Barnes, of our father, isn't just about infidelity or hidden families. It's about the financial and emotional consequences of secrecy, about the importance of proper estate planning, and about the healing that can happen even after devastating revelations. From a financial perspective, Dad's situation created unnecessary complications and potential legal battles. Multiple wills with contradictory provisions are a recipe for family conflict. If Dad had been transparent during his lifetime, he could have created a clear, legally sound estate plan that acknowledged all his children. A comprehensive estate plan should include not just a will, but also considerations for potential paternity claims, clear documentation of intentions regarding all beneficiaries, and possibly trusts that address complex family situations. Having regular conversations with your children about your financial affairs, even the uncomfortable parts, can prevent shock and confusion later. More importantly, clarity and transparency in your final wishes protect your loved ones from the emotional chaos we experienced. No inheritance is worth the pain of discovering your parent lived a double life. No amount of money can compensate for the feeling that your entire childhood narrative has been called into question. The truth, even difficult truth, given willingly and with love, is always less painful than secrets discovered after it's too late for explanations or apologies. Have you ever discovered something life-changing about a loved one after they passed? Your story could help someone else make sense of their own. Drop it in the comments. And if you believe real stories like this matter, subscribe to Gold Print. We share the ones no one else does.